Good Tuesday evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls. We have a couple interesting topics that we're going to be diving into today. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about how today was the second shortest day in history. So if you were watching us a couple weeks ago, back in early July, we actually had the first shortest day on record that occurred on July 9th. But today looks like it is now officially the second shortest day, and I'm going to dive into the details of that. But then next, we're going to be talking about a heat dome. What is it? It's buzzing in the headlines right now. And what does it mean for us here in the Chicagoland area? And finally, I'm sure you've been hearing the buzz around the idea of corn sweat. Well, it's actually a thing. And I'm going to talk about the science behind that as well and how it can actually make it feel even hotter to us here in the Midwest, certainly because of how many acres of corn we have. But first, let's dive into the shortest day in history, the second shortest day, I should say, to be clear. The first shortest day that was on July 9th because the Earth spun and made a full rotation in 1.6 milliseconds less than 24 hours. But today, it was 1.34 milliseconds shorter than 24 hours. So when the clock strikes midnight, we technically are going to complete a day that was just shy of 24 hours. So, you know, it's not like it was really a short day for us, not short enough for us to notice anyway, but it certainly is shorter than 24 hours. And there's a lot of questions starting to be raised of what does this mean going forward? Because we had a day like this early in July. We have another one today, but there's another one that's projected to happen in August. So what does this mean going forward if this continues to happen? Does it mean that we end up shortening our days over time, looking years and years down the road? That's something that scientists are really diving into. But for now, we'll just take it for face value and take it as the second shortest day of the year in history. The records began in 1973. So we've really only been keeping track of this for about 52 years or so. Let's talk about the heat now, because this is going to be a big deal for us here in the Chicagoland area tomorrow, certainly into our day on Thursday. And you'll notice it's really not just us dealing with the heat. So all of the colors that you see here throughout the central United States, those are some sort of heat headline. The orange, that's a heat advisory. The pink magenta color there, that's an excessive heat warning that's in effect across the Deep South following the Mississippi River right on down to the coast. But what's going on here? So we actually have a high pressure system that's parked right over the central United States. And underneath a high, you have sinking air. And that's why oftentimes when you have high pressure, you have really nice clear skies, lots of sunshine, and that's exactly what's taking place across the central U.S. But this high pressure system, it's really not moving all that much. So you have that sinking air that warms, and with that high that's not really going to be moving, it's trapping in that warmer air. In addition, we have clockwise wind flow around a high pressure system, which means all of the areas that you see here highlighted in some sort of heat headline, we're picking up a southwesterly wind that's just pumping in that Gulf moisture that we're going to be seeing for the next couple of days. So the heat, it's on its way. It's going to be here in full force on Wednesday, same thing into Thursday. And then oftentimes what you have around a ridge of high pressure, or a heat dome, if you will, is something that's called a ring of fire weather pattern. So that's also starting to take shape. Notice here, this is the severe weather outlook that's put out by the Storm Prediction Center. On the northern and eastern edge of a high pressure system, or a ridge, or a heat dome, again, if you will, that's where we find oftentimes periodic showers and thunderstorms, many of which can become strong or severe because of the heat that's associated with those heat domes and those heat waves. So taking us into tomorrow, you'll notice here how the Storm Prediction Center's forecast, it really doesn't change all that much. It just ever so slightly shifts that area of severe thunderstorms just to the south and the east. So we're going to dodge it tomorrow. Same thing going into tomorrow night. But then by Thursday, it could potentially be our turn to see some of those storms moving in. So the Storm Prediction Center does have the Great Lakes region highlighted in a marginal risk. That is a level 1 of 5, meaning isolated severe storms are going to be possible. And Thursday, that's when our weather pattern here locally is going to start to break down. So we have a frontal boundary that's going to be moving through, and that's going to give us a break from the heat going into Friday. But before we can get to that break from the heat, we're going to have to get through some of these storms. And again, that's all associated with that ring of fire weather pattern. So let's zoom things in locally here and talk about the alerts that we have. So all locations throughout the Fox 32 viewing area, all of Chicagoland highlighted in a heat advisory. So we're looking at heat indices that are going to be as high as 105 to 110. And this begins tomorrow at 10 a.m. So tomorrow morning, it's already going to be heating up very quickly. This goes into effect 10 a.m. tomorrow, lasting until 10 p.m. on Thursday. So this is a 2-day deal for most of us, but there are just a couple exceptions here. So I'm going to move the cursor around on this map, showing DeKalb County that this ends actually tomorrow at 10 p.m. Same thing for McHenry County. And then for those of you that are in LaPorte County over in Northwest Indiana, your heat advisory, that also is going to be expiring tomorrow at 7 p.m. So for most of the area, it's a 2-day deal, but for a couple of these counties, I think we're going to be just outside of the criteria that we need to be met to have a heat advisory being issued going all the way through the day on Thursday. So again, in this time frame, 105 to 110 looks like the heat indices that we're going to be stuck dealing with. Futurecast, I have the clock jumped ahead to about noon tomorrow. By noon tomorrow, we are already expected to feel like we are in the upper 90s to near 100 degrees. And then taking us throughout the afternoon, by 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there you see it, 100 to 110 is what it's going to be feeling like, projected by our in-house model here. And then even going forward into Wednesday evening, say you don't have plans until 8, 9 p.m. or so. Notice what it's still going to be feeling like. Even after the sun is going down, it's still feeling like the upper 90s to near 100 degrees. So what does this mean for us and our bodies? It means that heat exhaustion is certainly going to be something that we have to look out for. Heat-related illnesses, and children and elderly are most susceptible to that. If you don't have access to air conditioning, you're going to want to find ways to keep yourself cool, because even at nighttime, it's not going to get all that cool. Actual air temperatures Wednesday night going into Thursday morning, they're only going to drop down to the upper 70s. But in the city, because of the urban heat island effect, which means that we hold on to more heat in urban areas because of all of the concrete, the cement that holds on to heat for a little bit longer, our low temperatures may very well be near 80 degrees. So we're not going to get enough time and enough relief from this heat for those effects to not compound going into Thursday. And by Thursday, notice the heat index, it's just as high, about 105 to 110 is going to be the potential Thursday afternoon. So we really have to pay close attention to what our bodies are telling us. If you can, here's some safety tips. You can run through some of these. Of course, you don't want to be outside in the heat of the day. If you have to be out and about, or you're really hoping to get in those morning runs or morning walks or even daytime walks, try to move those and adjust your day into the early morning or the evening when we have at least some relief from the heat. But remember, even in the morning, the evening hours, it is still going to be hot, but the worst of it will, of course, be during the afternoon. And then, of course, if you're going to be out and about, remain hydrated, and you're going to want to avoid alcoholic drinks, because that can just make things a little bit worse as far as dehydration goes. All right, let's talk about corn sweat. This has been a buzz phrase in the news lately. And what does it mean? Well, when you're talking about the Midwest, this is a very Midwest thing, by the way. So in the Midwest, we actually have over 11 million acres of corn, and corn is known to release a lot of water vapor into the air. So corn sweat is essentially an easy way of saying evapotranspiration, which is a process that takes place when plants, they release water vapor through their leaves. But corn is really, really efficient at this, especially during the peak growing season, which we're in, by the way. So for the next month or so, we could be dealing with higher dew points in the Midwest because of the corn, especially when we have these really hot days. And here's just a really wild fact for you. So 1 acre of corn can actually release 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water into the air each day. So each day, that's 3,000 to 4,000 gallons that are released into the air just from 1 acre of corn. And again, in the Midwest, we have over 11 million acres. So this is actually going to be impacting the forecast. And that's what everyone's kind of been buzzing about. So we're always talking about dew point temperatures whenever we have a lot of heat and humidity, because it's the dew point that really defines what does it feel like to our body. If dew points are in the 60s, you're starting to notice that humidity. If it's in the 70s, it feels downright uncomfortable. Anytime dew point temperatures are reaching about 80 degrees, it feels just downright oppressive, very, very uncomfortable and sticky to be outside. That's what this is going to be doing to us tomorrow and then into Thursday as well. So this corn sweat, or this evapotranspiration, is actually going to be increasing our dew points in addition to that extreme heat that's going to be here. Coming up right after this short break of 2 minutes, I'm going to detail our forecast here at home and when we can expect a break from this heat. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back. Hopefully you had an opportunity to enjoy today, because temperatures today, they were actually very seasonable for this time of the year. We topped out in the mid 80s, hit 86 degrees at O'Hare, but the next couple of days, that's when we really start to crank up the heat. So tomorrow and Thursday, we're expected to be in the mid to upper 90s, but it's going to be feeling so much hotter because of those high dew point temperatures and also that corn sweat that we were just talking about that's going to push those dew points even higher. So your heat index is actually going to be as high as 105 to 110 both Wednesday and into Thursday. Of course, we do have that heat advisory going into effect Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., lasting until 10 p.m. on Thursday evening. But then by Friday, we're starting to feel some relief. We're going to be in the mid 80s for your highs on Friday, mid to upper 80s on Saturday. But then by Sunday, we're right back at it again. We're counting on high temperatures that are going to be right around 90 degrees and looking beyond the next 5 days. So this is your temperature outlook from July 28th through August 1st. And you'll notice that we're still strongly favored to see above average conditions. So we have several days next week that look like we could be in the 90s again. So unfortunately, once we get past Wednesday and Thursday, that's not the end of it. We're going to get a brief break, and then 90s are going to return by Sunday and Monday of next week. For tonight, fairly comfortable, 73 degrees. We do have that humidity, but it's not going to be too oppressive tonight. It really starts to increase, though, after the sun comes up tomorrow. Tonight, we're going to be partly cloudy. We'll have lows right around 73 degrees. And then your 3-day forecast, find some water to have nearby. Take a trip to the beach, but of course, you'll want to limit your time in the sun or outside of the water because it's going to be dangerously hot out there. Take care of yourselves. 96 degrees expected for your high on Wednesday, partly cloudy skies. And then on Thursday, we have a chance for showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon, the evening hours. Some of those could potentially be on the stronger side of things. That's all associated with the cold front that's going to be working its way in, finally bringing some sort of relief to us by the end of this work week. But on Friday, we do have a good chance for showers and thunderstorms. High temperatures are likely going to be right around the mid 80s. We'll have your full forecast, including your 7-day, and just how much humidity are we dealing with next week for our next round of 90s. All those details and more are coming up on the news at 9 p.m. We'll see you soon.